This weather is about to change in a big way as we'll be tracking multiple days of severe weather. Let's break down the details for you in this update. Take a look at the overall satellite picture this afternoon, and we've got a steady stream of moisture that's coming in from the Pacific. This is your active subtropical jet stream that's pulling all the moisture and lifting it back into Texas and swinging into the Arklatex as well as into Kentucky, back into Tennessee, where you see things are starting to explode across that region. In fact, we do have an upgraded moderate risk for severe weather today and a high risk for tornadoes, unfortunately, right there into Kentucky yet again, and then as well as southern Illinois, southern Indiana, as well as getting back into the St. Louis region. But don't let your guard down even further south, as in Tennessee, even swinging back into Arkansas, and then a large hail event will swing back into northeast Texas and getting into portions of North Texas after, say, the 4 o'clock time frame. But we already have several severe thunderstorm watches already in place, and this was right over Kentucky, where things are already kind of getting going across that region. We could be looking at some significant hail, unfortunately a couple of tornadoes across that region, and some wind gusts approaching upwards to 80 miles an hour. These will definitely be packing a punch, but that is not the only area. We also have another piece of energy that's right along the East Coast. In fact, those areas across the Northeast, back into the Philadelphia region, as well as into Trenton, Atlantic City, all those areas into Dover are included into a severe thunderstorm watch that goes for about another 5 hours or so until 5 o'clock Eastern time. It has some 2-inch hail potential, maybe up to golf ball size in some areas, and then some 70-mile-per-hour wind gust and some frequent lightning up there with those systems. But that's just this afternoon, and then later on to the early evening time frame, we're gonna be watching numerous thunderstorms starting to explode across this boundary. So I think Kentucky just lights up today. There's likely going to be more energy across Illinois and Indiana, and then a secondary piece of energy that will backtail across Arkansas, as well as into northeast Texas, and getting into the Dallas-Fort Worth region, likely after the 4 o'clock time frame. They could be looking at some big time hail producers down there. So it's a high impact day. Unfortunately, it could be a tornado outbreak day. So you just got to be listening to all watches and warnings and take heed and take shelter as soon as possible, because these things are going to be moving at a pretty big clip. And if you take a look at the overall helicity tracks, this is where your favorite areas of the strongest rotation, and those would include some tornadic activity as well as some upward rising motion air with the extensive updrafts that would be included as some larger hail. In fact, again, Kentucky is over that region, and that's why they do have that moderate risk in place. So that's obviously the highest impact areas today across areas of Kentucky into Tennessee. But even like I mentioned, further south into Arkansas and as well as into Texas there, we could be looking at some bigger time hailstones coming out of right over the Metroplex as it explodes, and then those will shift east southeast right into the afternoon. And unfortunately, yes, we do have a high-end tornado risk. These tornado parameters that are hitting pretty much off the chart today, folks. So it's unfortunately, it's a high-impact day. So it's one of those days that you got to keep weather aware and take heed of all warnings that are going to unload. But it doesn't end there, folks. This just continues in tomorrow. In fact, this is going to be yet another day, and there's several days even after this, as we'll be turning our attention to more of the southern plains as we have a disturbance that will be coming in from the west, and you can definitely see an active dry line will start to take shape. And this pushes the energy actually a little bit further off to the west as well. So the initiation point will be further west. So, and that would include Oklahoma as well. You can see the dew points are ripe. I mean, anytime in late May when you got dew points in the mid 70s, you got temperatures in the low 90s, you've got Cape values in the 5,000 range, you got all the ingredients in place for severe weather, especially if the active dry line starts to unload, and then you have some sort of disturbance that comes in from the west. All those ingredients are coming together, would in fact elevate the severe storm risk. And as of right now, we do have that slight risk in place from the Storm Prediction Center. This would probably be upgraded, but nonetheless, that hatched risk would imply some golf ball size hail or larger, even on Saturday across Dallas and portions of West Texas, getting into Oklahoma as well as into Arkansas. And we'd include an upgraded tornado risk as well across the North Texas region. Yes, that does include Oklahoma as well. And further off to the northeast, you do have a low-end tornado threat and some stronger wind gust and some larger hail potential along the east coast heading into the daytime on Saturday. But yes, these isolated supercells could mean business across Oklahoma, northeast Texas, into the Dallas region, across the Metroplex. This is likely a snapshot, maybe looks like about 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. I mean, all these little isolated bubblers, they could be some larger hail producers doing some significant damage across the region. So yeah, again, after 4 o'clock, it's one of those times you got to be on high alert. It's about a 4 to 6 hour window, but that window is going to be packing a punch, and it's likely going to be more widespread than what you're likely going to be seeing, this afternoon, likely upwards to like 60% coverage instead of 30% coverage. But the Cape values are even likely higher on Saturday. We're approaching the 6,000 range. That's like 6 times the normal energy it takes to produce a regular, thunderstorm. So that's some pretty intense energy. And that's why we do have that larger hail risk into play, because the atmosphere, unfortunately, is calling for that and could call for some significant hail that would come out of that type environment. And unfortunately, it just reloads again on Sunday. We have a same kind of similar setup. Another piece of energy comes in out west. You have the active dry line. You got dew points in the low to mid 70s. Same identical setup, but this time it could be even further north. That includes all of Oklahoma, and now we're talking areas into Kansas as well. And that's why we do have it even right now, an upgraded enhanced risk for severe storms back into the Kansas region. Now we're talking Tulsa, into Oklahoma City, back into Dallas again. And then as they push off to the southeast, they're likely not going to be as intense, as the main corridor will be likely in the southern and central plains on Sunday. But there's the radar depiction, right? Like a broken record after 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Yet again, the active dry line gets active. Showers and thunderstorms start to erupt across this boundary. Little to no cap would likely be in place, so therefore these things go severe big time quickly, and they could be more larger hail producers across that atmosphere. So definitely be on high alert even on the day on Sunday. But there's the setup. You got a lot of warmth across the south. That's the warm sector. That's where all the nasty stuff is. Further to the north, we're like pleasant light conditions. Actually, some cooler May-like air is coming into play for much of the northwest and much of the northern tier, and back into the northeast as well. So it's all the action is mainly on the southern tier of the U.S., back into the southeast and much of the southern and central plains. And I think that's likely where it's going to stand going into Monday as well. Look, you got more of an active dry line. Things bubble up in the heat of the afternoon as things start to erupt again. 4 or 5 o'clock. Unfortunately, Monday could be more of a tornado threat now. We'll be dealing with more of a larger hail concern, but now we've got a ton of shear and rotating at different directions on Monday afternoon. And so we could be looking at some elevated and enhancement on the tornado front across the southern and central plains, heading into that Monday time frame. Of the way it looks right now. But the way it looks right now, they already have that enhanced risk into fruition already across Oklahoma City, back into Tulsa. Wichita goes further north into Nebraska, because the dew points, right? The dew points surge well north by Monday. And this would easily, based on the data, what we're seeing even this far out, could likely be expanded and intensed, and it could actually end up being a moderate risk in some areas going into Monday. So another high impact today, even going into that Monday time frame. And again, it doesn't end there. This is Tuesday. Again, the similar setup. Now it probably shifts a little bit because of the dry line. So, but we're trying to push this system out of here, but this will be the 5th day in a row we'll be dealing with severe storms. But as the way it looks right now, probably Dallas would be back into play again, eastern side Oklahoma, Arkansas, back into Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee. Those same areas have been hit. They're going to unfortunately get hit again for that 5th day in a row. So it's one of those times, folks. I mean, this is the late May. You got to be on high alert out there if you live in these high severe weather, prone areas this time of year. So it's just, unfortunately, we got to get past at least Tuesday, because once we do that, it's pretty nice weather to end the middle of next week and head into the next weekend. So it's going to be a bumpy ride, definitely, for the next 5 days. So keep it right here where I protect you before and after the storm.